A humanitarian plane, 5 armed couriers, and a single missile over the Gulf of Mexico. That's how a $280 million payload disappeared in seconds. But the real strike happened 3 weeks earlier. We're pulling back the curtain on the data war. 247 intercepted calls, shell accounts hopping across borders, and a digital fence that closed on 2 cartels before the jet fuel even burned. If you think counter-narcotics is about raids and sirens, this will rewire how you see the battlefield. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. They never saw a badge or a helicopter. What they felt was a city getting narrow without a siren in earshot. 84 eyes and 57 ears pulled tight from the Rio Grande to Laredo's warehouses, stitched through 12 quiet satellite hops. Some sat on fixed poles with narrow fields of view. Others looked like beat-up trail cams in scrub or small boxes tucked above HVAC units. Rooftop optics watched long lines, river bends, feeder roads, the lanes where a courier could coast without braking. Roadside mics leaned toward intersections where idling engines gave you more than plate numbers. The result wasn't a wall. It was a feed that never slept. The crews treated the border like a logistics firm treats a warehouse. Decoy convoys baited watchers onto empty routes. Burners flipped every shift. Gaps went silent without warning. Faces drifted into frame, and the radios cut dead. Radios ticked with coded phrases, and the whole convoy slid 3 blocks over. The point wasn't chaos. It was to keep sensors out of sync. And for a while, it worked. Then the funnel started doing its job. 312 hours of video didn't play straight. Motion tags shaved off the dead space and pushed hot frames to the front. 247 calls did not get transcribed. They got scanned for tone, cadence, and odd nouns that didn't belong. Street maps turned into a heat grid with little islands that pulsed, then cooled, then pulsed again. You could watch the city breathe. When the map brightened near a warehouse row, analysts did not guess. They drilled. Here's the trick that cracked the timing. An audio node flagged a low compressor hum at 3:02 a.m. 3 nights running. It wasn't a truck. It sat under a steady frequency band that pointed to an industrial pump, not a fridge or a car. 6 minutes after that tone rose, a downstream camera 2 miles away recorded taillights leaving a tin-sided building with no sign on the door. The first night looked like a coincidence. The second looked like a test. By the third, the cameras were already centered. Humans closed the gaps the machines could not see. An analyst tagged every trash pickup near known stash houses and clocked the outliers. Bags at 2 a.m., no day service. Another tracked fuel stops where receipts spiked 10 minutes after a call chain went quiet. Night-only deliveries stacked on a simple board until the handoffs formed a loop. Couriers who never met on camera still matched on timing, distance, and stops. The map turned from dots to lines, and the lines told a schedule. Then a repeat showed its face. 3 nights on, 2 off. The pattern matched a portable generator cycle at a mixing spot near the river. Power readings implied they topped off on the off nights and ran hard when the hum returned. A van with blacked-out panels slipped past 2 license plate readers only on those off nights. Every time, a second sedan ran a half-mile back, changing lanes when the van did and braking where it braked. Not random, not casual. That was a courier with a tail watching for eyes. The payoff wasn't a circle of steel. It was a rhythm map. Camera angles synced with audio spectrograms and power draw bumps gave a move window before any engine turned. Operators didn't wait for headlights. They waited for frequencies to wobble and meter ticks to shift. When that happened, crews could predict who would roll, which road they'd use, and how long they'd try to stay dark. Rhythm gave them movement. Money would give them time and place. Rhythm gave them movement. Money fixed the clock. A Piper P. A28 can hop the line in minutes, but the clue that mattered never left a lobby. At 3:17 p.m., a transfer cleared at a small bank with a name most people would miss on a highway sign. That single timestamp did more than any radar sweep. It latched the operation to a schedule the crews couldn't wiggle off. 19 Shell Company transfers moved $43,250,000 through a stack of agricultural exporters and relief front NGOs spread across 2 countries. The names looked harmless, invoices looked neat, and the routing numbers had no obvious ties to the crews. The pathway zigged through crop inputs and aid shipments, the kind of paper that slides through compliance if no one is asking why a tomato co-op needs recurring round number remittances from a disaster fund. Each hop shifted jurisdiction, then language, then banking software, building fog on purpose. The problem for them, the wires didn't line up with wheels. Cash headed east on the ledger while vans pushed west on the map. Radios chattered about a delivery with no trucks assigned. That mismatch didn't confuse analysts. It isolated a second pipeline that didn't need roads. The ledger hinted at lift, not lanes. The cadence on paper formed a metronome. 3-day holding period on the first account, then a 24-hour mirror transfer to an offshore node where scrutiny thins out, then a 6-hour downstream dispersal to a fuel vendor tucked beside a private airstrip outside Laredo. Every cycle pushed the same amounts through the same gaps in banking hours, as if someone had run the playbook enough times to trust the clock more than the weather. Money hit metal without a word spoken. The fuel vendor logged a sudden top-off that matched, to the hour, the offshore mirror landing. Minutes later, a maintenance invoice posted for a Piper PA-28 held by a charity front. The service line read, "Payload balance check." Aircraft techs use that language when they tune weight and center of gravity. On a short runway, that note says more than a manifest ever will. Code on the radios kept things plain to the untrained ear. Blankets and salt moved on the same night's fuel, and parts moved, a clean correlation to meth packs and desiccant. Storm window rose during a forecast that showed a thin gulf gap suitable for a low radar profile. Not a storm at all, but a timing cue. None of it sounded criminal. All of it lined up when you laid the calls over the wires. Timeline locked when air and ground sensors met the ledger. An audio node near the strip caught turbine spools when there shouldn't have been any. A rural cam flared with a floodlight at 2:11, the same cycle the fuel invoice stamped. Add the 3:17 p.m. clearance from the small bank, subtract the hold and mirror, and the takeoff window slid into a narrow slot before dawn. Intent showed up without bluster. Intercepts flagged a west pad near SD, a short dirt strip outside San Diego used by crop dusters and weekend pilots. A second account topped off a prepaid card and covered a spotter car on I-8, a quiet sedan with a trunk liner ready for wrapped packages. Money paid the driver, gas, and a motel 2 exits past the pickup. The payoff landed in planning, not pursuit. Wire delays and fuel buys set a countdown. When the last dispersal reached the vendor, the window collapsed to 6 hours. The FA-18 was already up high when the prop turned on the PA-28, closing a sky the crew thought was empty. The plane slipped off radar over the water. The transactions, the audio, and the light at 2:11 kept talking. The missile ended a flight, the funnel ended a network. Rhythm lined up movement. Money fixed the clock. Speed and camouflage lost to timing, sensors, and ledgers that pinned crews before engines warmed. That's the fight now. Data first, steel second. If this changed how you see the battle, stay with us. Ask the hard questions. Share this so the next ring tightens faster and sooner on the next pipeline trying to hide in plain sight. Next time, we unpack the vault from Operation Iron Tide. Burner phones, offshore drives, and a distribution forecast aimed at flooding 70 million doses every 90 days.